Welcome to Paul's Passive House. All right, so I've installed the foil on the roof, under the roof deck, and I did a prototype of the air barrier that I'm going to install in here. And what that prototype consists of is I found this material here. This is the fluted plastic that you find at Home Depot or wherever. It's very rigid, it's very stiff. And I'm cutting it into 4-inch slices or pieces. And then I'm installing it under the roof deck, right here. What this does is it allows for air to pass through and under to the underside of the roof deck, allowing for air to move freely through this space, and then it will essentially give me a hybrid attic. It'll be ventilated, but it will also be airtight. Now, I showed you this before, but this is a piece of 1/2-inch foam, and it's been cut out, notched out to fit along here, and then I'll go through and seal that up with sealer, but that's gonna be where I tape the air barrier to, and then it'll run up the roof deck and over to the other side. And I'll show you how I plan on doing this in just a moment. So I've cut out these pieces, L-shaped pieces of vinyl, and put them here. So I just stapled them in. And what this does is it provides me with a space to connect to my air barrier. So this is the membrane that I went with, and I'm gonna cut it out and install it under the roof. So it's important to keep in mind that what you're watching is a prototype. I don't actually know how this is all gonna come together, but I know I need to use that 1/2-inch polyiso foam to connect to the roof line, and you can see it there. That's all gonna be glued down to the zip system sheathing, which will give me a continuous air barrier from the bottom of the wall up to the top of the wall, and then from the top of the wall to the transition to the roof. Now, the reason why that thin polyiso sheeting gives me a proper air barrier is because it has paper and foil on it, so it's not just polyiso. But then that 1/2-inch polyiso gets zip system liquid flashed to the zip system in the wall. That carries my air barrier to the bottom side of the roof, where I am now connecting with double-sided tape the smart membrane to the polyiso sheet. Now that smart membrane staples to the underside of the roof deck, to each of the joists. Now each of those joists also has a radiant barrier stapled to it and those fluted pieces of plastic. This allows for maximum airflow under my roof deck. You have to remember this is a hybrid system, so I'm trying to maximize airflow under the roof deck and minimize air, vapor, and moisture transfer into my insulation system. Underneath this air barrier, there's going to be all kinds of insulation. I'm going to fill that cavity, and I don't want water or vapor or any kind of moisture to get in there. And that's why I'm installing this smart membrane. Okay, so we've got double-sided tape here, which is working really well. And then we're going to add another layer of tape right there where it meets all the way across there to make sure it's double tight. Then I'm gonna take liquid flash, and I'm gonna liquid flash all through here And if I have to foam it or whatever, I'll do that. But liquid flash, foam, whatever it takes. And even right there and there and so on. So it's gonna be an interesting path to airtight. Now I have to cut out the next piece. So I'm gonna do that. Let's see. Okay, so I've installed the second piece right here. Goes near to the end. It's not exactly on the end, but I have a little gap here, no problem. So now I'm going to install the rest of this membrane. You'll notice that I have a gap between the radiant barrier. There's radiant barrier and then there's a gap, and that's where the joists come together. I can't actually put radiant barrier there easily, but my solution to filling that gap with the membrane, with the air barrier, vapor barrier membrane, was to put those L-shaped pieces of vinyl. I stapled those in place, and that gives me a flat surface to connect to. And as of right now, I actually didn't cut this membrane perfectly. This is the prototype. So I don't even know how I'm going to connect the membrane that you see me installing now to the sheet of membrane that's going to be installed above it on the other side of that gap. I don't know how that's going to happen. So here I am trying to figure out, how am I going to bridge this gap between the smart membrane that's installed on the lower half of this joist and the smart membrane that I'm going to have to install above it on the other side of the gap. So right now I'm kind of playing with the tape. I'm trying to see if the tape is going to be sturdy enough, if it's going to be sticky enough, if it's going to hold. And I'm testing this membrane to figure that out. I'm also planning my strategy for connecting the two pieces of membrane. I haven't even installed the membrane above this membrane. I haven't done that yet, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how am I going to do that? And how am I going to cut this membrane? If you saw me cut the first piece of membrane, it wasn't an exact science, but this piece now that you see me working with, I've cut so that it's much, much bigger than the space that I need. And what that allows me to do is cut flaps into the membrane and then fold those flaps across this gap along that L bracket, that vinyl L bracket that I made and stapled in place, and connect it to the membrane that I've already installed below. And you see me here, I'm measuring and I'm cutting and I'm being very, very careful because I want to make sure that I install this correctly. If it's too short, then I'll screw myself up. If it's too long, then there won't be enough on the top to connect across the peak of the roof to the other side of the membrane. There's going to be another gap at the peak of the roof, and I have to be able to span that gap to connect to the other piece of membrane that I'll install over there. Plus, this membrane has to be installed perfectly perpendicular to the joists. Otherwise, it gets all wonky, and you get weird folds in it, and it won't end up straight on the other end. So I'm being very careful to make sure I install this first bit as accurately, as square as possible. So I've purposely cut the membrane long on each side by 8 inches. And that's enough to span this gap plus some. But I haven't actually figured out how I'm going to successfully span the gap. So what you're watching me do now is sort of work this gap and try to figure out, okay, how is this membrane gonna be cut so that it doesn't tear or rip, and also so that it leaves me with enough to tape it so that it's airtight, so that we don't get gaps in the membrane itself. Now I'm using double-sided tape. I'm using other kinds of really aggressive special tape in order to secure this membrane to both the wood and the vinyl L bracket and the membrane that is already installed beneath it. If you'd like a free energy efficiency consultation, please email me at paulspassivehouse@gmail.com.